What would you do if your boss walked into the office and said, by the way, you've got 4 weeks of paid leave this year, and yes, we actually expect you to use it? For most Americans, that sounds like a dream, or a prank, or maybe even a trap. But for thousands of Americans working in Australia, that exact moment has become a reality, and the shock is real. Not just mild surprise, not polite confusion. We're talking full-blown disbelief, because when you grow up in a system where paid time off feels earned through exhaustion, stepping into a culture where rest is protected by law can feel like stepping into an alternate universe. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. Picture this. An American software engineer relocates to Sydney for what was supposed to be a 2-year contract. He's used to negotiating every single vacation day back home, used to checking emails on Thanksgiving, used to calculating how many sick days he can take without being that employee. On his first week in Australia, HR hands him a contract outlining his benefits: 4 weeks of paid annual leave, 10 days of paid personal leave, public holidays fully paid, long service leave after extended tenure, superannuation contributions. He reads it twice, then 3 times. He genuinely thinks there's a typo. This is where the culture shock begins. Because in the United States, there is no federal law requiring employers to provide paid vacation. Zero. It's typically negotiated, and many workers either receive limited days or feel unable to use them. Meanwhile, under Australia's national employment standards, full-time employees are legally entitled to 4 weeks of paid annual leave each year. Not optional, not performance-based, not a favor from management. A right. Now imagine the emotional whiplash. At first, many Americans working in Australia don't trust it. They hoard their leave. They avoid booking trips. They quietly ask coworkers, wait, people actually take the full 4 weeks? And the Australians laugh, not mockingly, but genuinely confused. Of course they take it. Why wouldn't they? It's theirs. And that's when something deeper hits. In Australia, taking leave isn't seen as laziness. It's seen as normal, healthy, responsible even. Managers will sometimes remind employees to schedule their holidays. Some workplaces even shut down over Christmas so everyone rests at the same time. Contrast that with American hustle culture, where grind is glorified and burnout is practically worn like a badge of honor. But here's where it gets even more surprising. Public holidays in Australia aren't just symbolic, they are widely observed days off, paid. Australia has around 10 national public holidays, plus additional state-based holidays. Think about that. Guaranteed paid time off, simply because it's a national holiday. No awkward request emails, no checking whether it counts against your PTO balance. It just exists. For many American expats, the first Christmas in Australia is surreal. Offices close, emails stop, colleagues disappear on beach holidays, and no one apologizes for it. No one logs in just in case. The culture collectively agrees that rest matters, and this is where the emotional shift starts. Some Americans feel envy. Some feel anger, not at Australia, but at what they've normalized back home. Others feel relief, almost guilt-ridden relief. For the first time in their adult lives, they take a 2-week vacation without fear. They visit family, they explore the Great Ocean Road, they travel to Bali, and when they return, their job is still there, their career hasn't collapsed. The world kept spinning. There's another layer too: sick leave. In Australia, full-time employees receive 10 days of paid personal leave per year, which can be used for illness or caring for a family member. And culturally, if you're sick, you stay home. You don't drag yourself into the office coughing to prove dedication. You don't fear retaliation for prioritizing your health. For Americans used to minimal sick leave or workplace pressure to push through, this can feel revolutionary. But here's the twist many don't expect. At first, some Americans struggle with the slower pace. The after-hours emails aren't constant. Coworkers log off on time. Weekends are sacred. There's less obsession with appearing busy. Productivity is still valued, but not at the cost of personal life. For someone raised in an environment where career identity equals personal worth, that adjustment can be uncomfortable. Yet, over time, something changes. Stress levels drop. Relationships improve. Burnout fades. Americans in Australia often report feeling more balanced, more present, more human. They begin to question the narrative they grew up with. That success requires constant sacrifice. They start to realize that employee rights in Australia aren't radical, they're structural. And this is where the biggest shock of all happens. Many Americans who move to Australia expecting a temporary adventure end up extending their stay. Not just because of beaches or weather, but because of work-life balance, Because paid leave in Australia isn't theoretical, it's practiced. Because being encouraged to take holidays changes how you see your own value. Of course, it's not perfect. Salaries can differ, cost of living can be high, the job market has its own pressures. But the baseline protections create a different psychological foundation. Knowing you are entitled to rest changes how you experience work itself. And here's the uncomfortable question that lingers for many viewers watching this. Why is this shocking at all? Why does guaranteed paid leave feel like luxury instead of standard? Why do so many Americans accept minimal vacation as normal? The contrast between work culture in Australia versus USA forces a deeper conversation about priorities, economics, and values. For American expats sharing their experiences online, the reactions are intense. Some viewers call it socialism, others call it common sense. Debates explode in comment sections, but beneath the politics lies something simple. Humans need rest, and some systems protect that need more clearly than others. Imagine growing up believing burnout is inevitable, then discovering it's not universally accepted. Imagine realizing that productivity doesn't collapse when employees take 4 weeks off a year. In fact, many Australian companies report strong productivity, precisely because workers aren't chronically exhausted. The cultural differences extend beyond policy. Australians often view excessive overtime skeptically. Staying late every night might raise eyebrows rather than admiration. Efficiency during work hours is valued more than performative overwork. And when Americans finally take their first full 4-week holiday, the transformation is often emotional. They rediscover hobbies, they reconnect with partners, they sleep, they think, they breathe. Some even admit they forgot what that felt like. So when Americans say they were shocked to receive paid leave and holidays in Australia, it's not just about days off, it's about redefining what work is supposed to be. It's about questioning whether exhaustion should be normalized. It's about realizing that another model exists, and it functions. Now, here's where I want to hear from you. If you were offered 4 guaranteed weeks of paid leave every year, would you take all of it? Or would you still hesitate? Is hustle culture empowering or trapping? And if you're an American working in Australia right now, has it changed how you see your home country? Because this conversation isn't just about Australia, it's about expectations. It's about rights. It's about how different systems shape how we live our daily lives. And maybe, just maybe, the biggest shock isn't that Australia offers paid leave. It's that so many Americans are surprised by it. But here's what no one tells you. The longer Americans stay in Australia, the harder it becomes to imagine going back. Reverse culture shock hits differently. Visiting home, they notice colleagues skipping vacations. They see friends exhausted, bragging about unused PTO. And for the first time, they see it from the outside. Some return permanently, others stay abroad, and some become vocal advocates for better work-life balance in the United States. The real story isn't about one country being better than another. It's about awareness. Once you experience a system where rest is built into the structure, it's impossible to unsee it. And that realization, that's the part that truly changes everything. But the story doesn't end there, because the real shift happens months later, when the novelty wears off and the new normal settles in. That's when Americans in Australia start noticing something even more powerful than paid leave itself, the mindset behind it. It's not just that Australians can take time off. It's that they're expected to. There's no unspoken competition about who sacrificed the most weekends. No subtle praise for burnout. In fact, if you don't take your leave, managers may gently ask why. And then comes the moment that truly changes everything. The first time an American worker takes a full 4-week holiday and completely disconnects. No Slack notifications, no guilt. They travel through Queensland, they visit family overseas, they spend afternoons doing absolutely nothing. And when they return, they're not seen as less committed. They're welcomed back like it's completely normal. Because it is. That's when the internal comparison begins. Back home in the US, friends are still negotiating PTO, still worried about layoffs,